Today, I'm going to talk about 5 of my favorite tree nuts that fight disease, repair the body, and help fight harmful body fat. They are walnuts, cashews, pecans, macadamia nuts, and pine nuts. You ready to dive in? Let's go. Nut number 1, walnuts. Now, walnuts are actually one of my favorite. It comes in a hard shell. You crack it open, and then the halves come apart, and you can just munch on them. There's a slightly bitter outside skin, and then this really, really nice, soft, meaty part inside. Walnuts can be eaten all kinds of different ways. They're one of my favorites. Now, nuts in general are a good source of healthy omega-3 fatty acids, and also a great source of dietary fiber. But walnuts have something else in them that's really special. They have a bioactive that can actually kill colon cancer stem cells. Let me explain what these are. Cancers are normal cells that have gone wild, berserk, mutant. And as these abnormal cells grow, they are replenished not only by dividing themselves, but they can actually be replenished by stem cells. Now, we can kill regular cancer cells with chemo, radiation, and immunotherapy, but these cancer stem cells are a real problem because they allow the cancer to come back. So when you actually hear of somebody who's actually had cancer, had it completely treated, and then years later, even after the 5-year window where people, sort of are hoping that they actually are going to be in remission after 5 years, sometimes the cancer comes back. And the reason it comes back are these little tiny cancer stem cells that can give rise to the cancer all over again, right? So it's a holy grail in the cancer treatment pharmaceutical world to look for drugs that can kill cancer stem cells. But Mother Nature beat everyone to the game, and walnuts contain this bioactive that can kill colon cancer stem cells in lab studies. Now, how do we know that walnuts are actually useful in the context of cancer? Well, there was a clinical study involving about 700 people. And this was a study done by 7 major cancer centers across the United States, like Harvard Medical School. And what the researchers found is that those cancer patients who had stage 3 colorectal cancer, that if they ate 2 fistfuls of tree nuts like walnuts a week while they're getting treatment, so this is actually, patients getting all the things they would normally get, plus eating 2 fistfuls of nuts like walnuts, there was a 70% reduction in the risk of dying from the cancer. Now, what could be going on? Basically, the dietary fiber from the walnuts feeds the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome boosts the immune system. That's one of the ways our gut health actually works. Good immune system, plus the effects of treatment, whatever it may be, your body combined with the medicines actually can help wipe the cancer out or tip the odds in favor of surviving the cancer. And that's what we think is going on. But the added dividend from walnuts is this ability to be able to kill cancer stem cells, which has been discovered in the lab. So that's one of the things. Now, I'll tell you, when I actually buy walnuts, I like to actually buy the halves. Buying the entire walnut itself, a little bit tricky for me because then I don't want to have to go to a nutcracker every time to open one of these things. When you go buy plain walnuts, they can come in halves, right? That's my favorite way to. But oftentimes when you buy them, they're like crumbles. Now, I don't really like to have to pick through crumbles and eat. It's like a crushed bunch of crackers. I prefer the halves. So I will actually go and pick out the halves. They're bigger, easier to pop in the mouth and chew, a little more satisfying. And I can actually make a trail mix out of it, for example. Now, if you want to actually roast walnuts or any tree nut, just preheat the oven to like 375. Get a cookie sheet, put a little extra virgin olive oil on it, very little, okay? And just let the nuts sit there and roast for a few minutes until you start smelling it, and then you're done, okay? If you're gonna eat a little salt, don't salt too much, right? Because salt is not good for blood pressure. Salt can cause hypertension or high blood pressure if you have too much salt. So just a little touch, or you can use other spices as well. Walnuts can also be used to make pesto. Instead of pine nuts, which is used in traditional pesto, use walnuts and crush them up. Then you can grind it up with extra virgin olive oil, some pecorino or Parmigiano cheese, the real stuff, and some other leaves of an herb like a basil walnut pesto. Absolutely delicious. Okay, you can spread it on bread. You can mix it into pasta. Another way to actually get the benefits of walnuts. Now, what about the ability to be able to help lose body weight? Well, this has been studied. Basically, tree nuts, because of their dietary fiber, help our gut microbiome improve the blood cholesterol levels. Blood lipids actually go down. Blood lipids are really important for weight management. All right. And a gut microbiome can improve insulin sensitivity. And when you actually improve the body's ability to bring in glucose into your muscles, into your cells, now your metabolism is being streamlined. So that actually helps to optimize your metabolism. All right. So these are all good reasons to actually eat walnuts, and I strongly encourage it. One thing I will tell you about buying tree nuts, if you go to a snack section, you'll see there's so many different pre-packaged nuts that are flavored, right? You've got your ranch flavored nuts, you've got your chili spice flavored tree nuts and walnuts and pecans and everything else. Be really careful, all right? Even though they may look appetizing or appealing and probably are very, very tasty, all right, admittedly, I always tell people, take the package off the shelf, take a look at it and look for the ingredient label and look to see if there are things that you don't want. For example, added sugar or cane sugar, high fructose corn syrup, or artificial flavoring or artificial coloring or artificial preservatives. Those are all the kinds of things that you really don't want to actually eat, because the nuts themselves are really healthy, all right? But you don't want to be taking one step forward and two steps back because of all the other things that have been added when the nuts have been pre-spiced, pre-prepared. I always tell people that just to prepare it yourself is the easiest way to actually go. And this is the same deal whether you're going on a trip and you're stopping by the newsstand or the convenience store at the airport, or whether you're at a gas station and you're taking a break and you go into the store to use the restroom and look at all those snacks you can get. Yes, nuts are a healthy snack, but I actually encourage you, bring them with you, okay? They'll actually be the best way that if you make it yourself, you know exactly what's in it. That's the best way. All right, second nut I want to talk about are cashews. I grew up eating cashews, and one of my earliest memories is there was a department store, that would have these carts where it was cashews in a box that were being slowly roasted and lightly salted, and there'd be somebody there to actually get a scoop of the cashews out and put them into a little pouch and offer them to you, and they were amazing. So when my parents were shopping, I would go, they would distract me, they would actually give me some money, and I'd go get some cashews and I would snack on them. That's it, it was just roasted cashews and a little bit of salt. But since I was a kid, I've always appreciated cashews. So cashews, same deal. Great source of healthy plant-based fatty acids, omega-3s. Also a great source of dietary fiber, good for the gut microbiome. And for the same reason, helps to lower lipids, blood cholesterol, helps to improve insulin sensitivity, and also can help heal. It turns out that the gut microbiome can actually help to heal you from the inside out. Now, I actually worked on a study with looking at the gut microbiome and the effect of probiotics to stimulate the gut microbiome on healing wounds. And what we found is that in the lab, if you actually had animals with a wound, like a punch biopsy on their back, if they actually had probiotics to help their gut microbiome, you could speed up healing. So this is from the inside out, no bandages, just actually healing from the inside out. Nuts like cashews and walnuts will actually feed the gut microbiome and help facilitate this process of healing as well. Okay, so cashews. A lot of people may not appreciate this, but cashews come from a tree that produces something called a cashew apple. Look it up on Google. All right, the cashew apple isn't a real apple. It's a fruit from a nut tree. It's edible. All right, and the nut is edible as well. The cashew nut's a great source of protein. All right, and in some cultures, like in India, the nut itself is ground into a powder and is actually mixed into a base for creating like curries. All right, so great source of protein, great source of dietary fiber. It's got some healthy fats in it as well. What's not to like, especially when it's used as a base or a tasty sauce like a curry. Now, I was surprised to learn, by the way, when I was doing research on this, that cashews actually contain polyphenols called catechins, all right, including EGCG, which is exactly the same beneficial polyphenol that you'd find in green tea. Amazing. Cashews also contain a bioactive called lutein and zeaxanthin. And these two bioactives, lutein and zeaxanthin, are not only potent antioxidants, but they've actually been shown when they've actually given as supplements to actually protect your vision. And in fact, there are supplements that contain lutein and zeaxanthin specifically used to lower the risk of a condition called age-related macular degeneration, AMD, most common cause of blindness over the age of 65, and people who don't have diabetes. You know, when you hear someone say, oh, grandma's going blind because she's old. No, not because she's old, but because she most likely has AMD, age-related macular degeneration. Lutein and zeaxanthin, which is found in cashews, actually reduce the risk. They actually push back against that condition. Now, the other thing is that cashews deliver dietary fiber, as I talked about, and they can actually reduce inflammation in your body. And by reducing inflammation, that can counter the effect of having too much excess body fat. So regardless of what your weight is, but especially if you actually have excess body weight, right? Little overweight or a lot overweight, you're going to have some inflammation in your body, and eating cashews can actually counter that inflammation by having the dietary fiber feed your gut microbiome. That's something that I want to talk about with cashews. By the way, if you're going to go buy nuts in bulk, which is how I recommend that you buy them, don't buy too many at a time. I know you can go to some of these huge big box stores and get like a gigantic jug of nuts, and they might sit on your counter or under your table for like a year. Remember, nuts will eventually go rancid because they have oil and they're protein, right? You don't need to refrigerate them, although if you refrigerate nuts, they'll last a little bit longer. And if you freeze nuts, your tree nuts, they'll actually last even longer still, all right? But what I suggest is that when you're gonna go buy tree nuts, just buy enough that you can actually eat for a couple of weeks as a snack, or use it over a couple of weeks. Don't go buying the gigantic quantities of bulk nuts, all right? Okay, let's take a look at another nut, tree nut, that is good, one of my favorites that supports health. That is pecans. All right, if you're from the American South, you're familiar with pecans. You know, roasted pecans, pecan pie. There's a lot of traditions involving pecans. Again, pecans are a great source of dietary fiber, protein, and they've got polyphenols as well. And pecans improve gut health, just like the cashews and just like the walnuts as well. Now remember, gut health equals immune health. And if you want a good, strong immune system to be able to resist infections, you know, depending on what the season is or whatever bugs and germs are running around, you want to be as armed and as have your immune defenses shields up as much as possible. And eating pecans and tree nuts in general is a good way to be able to help get there, have a stronger immune shield by having those tree nuts feed your gut microbiome. All right. Now, studies in the lab have shown that either whole pecans or an extract from pecans contain polyphenols. Right. So, and these polyphenols have been shown to improve blood cholesterol profile, help to reduce body weight, and also these polyphenols have been shown in research to be able to increase the diversity of your gut microbiome. Now, let me explain what that means. In your gut, in your colon, which is the lower part of your gut, that's where most of your gut microbiome lives. About 39 trillion bacteria. They're not all the same bacteria. And in fact, what research now has revealed is that the more diverse, the more different kinds of healthy bacteria you have, the better off your health is. All right. And just like everything else we know about communities, the more diverse a community is, the more diverse your school is, the more diverse your work environment is, the more diverse your community, the better, the more rich, the more vibrant your environment is actually going to be. And that is also true. That also holds true for the gut microbiome. So the polyphenols in pecans actually can help promote more diversity in your gut microbiome. And that's actually really, really an important point to think about. All right. Now, I usually associate pecans with desserts like pecan pie, maybe candied pecans. Those are actually really tasty. But I can tell you that although they taste great, it's much better to eat the pecans in much healthier ways. I like them lightly toasted, okay, or just plain, and snack on them. Again, think about this. You are feeding your gut microbiome. You are actually feeding your health when you do that. But if you're really looking for creative ways that you might be able to prepare roasted tree nuts of any sorts, including pecans, you can look online to look for different types of recipes. But some of my favorite ways of doing it is you can dust it with a little bit of cayenne pepper for a little spice, mustard seed. There's another way of actually lighting up the flavors, kind of the savory flavors. Pecan turmeric, actually powerful anti-inflammatory spice. Another way of actually serving up pecans. And there's other healthy spices as well. And by the way, I've talked about pecans and we've talked about walnuts, talked about cashews. You don't have to eat these nuts in isolation. You can mix them all together, right? So you can create your own tree nut mix and then add those spices to it yourself. Keep it in a jar, tightly sealed. And if you stick it in the fridge, it'll actually last a lot longer. Again, don't forget I'm telling you is that nuts have oils in them, and those oils will eventually go rancid if you let them sit out for a long time. So I know that I used to have tree nuts, packages of tree nuts in my pantry. I'd keep them there for many, many months, and sometimes even longer. They're not good. All right. So you don't want to be, don't buy more than you actually can eat over, I would say, a couple of weeks. All right. So next nut that I want to actually tell you about are macadamia nuts. Now, I remember having macadamias once when I took a trip. It was a family vacation when I was a kid, and we went to Hawaii. And I remember seeing these kind of small marble-like nuts. They look like they'd be really hard, but actually they're kind of soft, and they tasted really great. And you can find them candied. I don't recommend that is the healthiest way to eat it, but they are lightly salted, and you can put all kinds of spices on them, and you can mix them with other nuts as well. Macadamias actually are native to Australia. All right, so they come from that part of the world, and they were actually an original bush food for Aboriginals there. Okay, so long before we thought about this for health and wellness as a snack, these nuts were foraged by Aboriginals, and they used them for food. Why? Look, they've got the healthy monounsaturated fatty acids, all right, the MUFAs. They're a great source of protein, a great source of dietary fiber, which is good for the gut microbiome. And more importantly, I actually enjoy eating them, okay? So there's similarities to all these aspects of the nuts. One of the common things is that they're all helping the gut microbiome, which actually promotes healing, can lower inflammation, which fights off disease, and it improves your blood cholesterol, your insulin sensitivity, so it helps your metabolism, and that is actually going to help you lose weight. The other thing that what nuts do is they actually can help promote the feeling of satiety, which means that you feel full when you don't feel like overeating the next time. All right, so by eating less, by feeling full, you're more likely to cut down on the calories they're actually taking in. So that's another reason to actually have nuts as a snack. All right, back to macadamias. Turns out that macadamias have been studied in a lab, and they have a bioactive that isn't found in some of these other nuts. And that bioactive is called beta sitosterol. Beta sitosterol. All right. And this is actually a natural chemical that's quite similar to cholesterol. All right. So you might say, well, I don't know if I want to be eating something that's got something like a cholesterol in it. But guess what? Clinical studies in men have shown that beta sitosterol might be useful in reducing the symptoms of a prostate condition called benign prostatic hypertrophy, BPH. Now, the prostate is actually located kind of like at the bottom of the of your pelvis of a man. The urethra runs through it. There's all kinds of nerves that run through it. The prostate produces semen in men. And as we men get older, the prostate can actually enlarge. And because there are tubes like the urethra that run through it, when the prostate enlarges and it actually can squash down the urethra, the tube that urine flows through from the bladder, it can actually impede the flow of urine. Not obstruct, but impede it by compression, right? You've got a tube, you're pressing it down. It's going to be harder to push fluid through it, all right? Harder to empty your urine, all right? And so that's one of the common conditions of men as it's aging, all right? It's a continuum from benign prostatic hyperplasia, BPH, to other prostate issues as well. And there are actually medical treatments that you can give for BPH, but guess what? Beta sitosterol has been studied in clinical trials to be able to reduce the symptoms of benign prostatic hypertrophy. Pretty cool, all right? Now, the other thing that's really interesting is that beta sitosterol also been studied in the lab, and it has some anti-tumor properties as well. Anti-tumor properties. A lot more research needs to be done about this, but this is what happens when there's a new compound in a food that's been discovered. Researchers kind of pounce on it and try to figure out like, what can this do? What useful application could it actually have? And so benign prostatic hypertrophy is one of them, prostate swelling. And now cancer researchers are beginning to look at this one as well. Okay, now here's an interesting thing. Beta sitosterol is also anti-angiogenic. Now, angiogenesis actually is a term that describes blood vessel growth. Angio, blood vessel, genesis, how they grow. I'm an expert in angiogenesis. That's what I do for a living in terms of my research area where I started. And I'll tell you, blood vessels are absolutely critical for your health because they are the highways and byways that bring oxygen that we breathe and nutrients that we eat to every single organ and every single cell in your body. So you want good blood vessels. And the body knows how to control just the right amount of blood vessels so there's always enough blood vessels. Not too few, not too many, but just right. It's called the Goldilocks zone. You know the bears? Not too hot, not too cold, just right. Not too hard, not too soft, just right. Same deal with angiogenesis and your body's other health defenses. And these are what I teach in my Eat to Beat Disease course, the 5 Bodies, 5 Health Defenses. So if you're interested, check out my course and we go into a real deep dive in this. But here's the thing. There are chronic conditions, in this case, an autoimmune condition like rheumatoid arthritis, where the disease leads to inflammation, and the inflammation is sort of like a wildfire in the body, actually recruits new blood vessels into diseased tissues. In the case of rheumatoid arthritis, new abnormal blood vessels grow into the joint. Now, joints normally don't have blood vessels. So when blood vessels grow in there because of inflammation, and the blood vessels aren't normal, here's what they do. They're bringing in oxygen and nutrients, but they're also bringing in enzymes, all right? And the enzymes that the blood vessels, the new abnormal blood vessels bring to the joints in rheumatoid arthritis, they get out there and they leak. Those enzymes destroy the joint. They chew up the joint, all right? That's not what you want. And the other thing is that because the blood vessels that grow in rheumatoid arthritis are not normal, you know what happens? Those blood vessels leak fluid. What do you think happens in a joint when you're leaking fluid from these abnormal blood vessels? the joint will swell. And now you can actually see exactly what we would expect in rheumatoid arthritis. You get these joints that are swollen, inflamed, very painful, and the cartilage in there of the joint is actually being destroyed by the enzymes released from these new blood vessels. Okay, now researchers in China have actually been studying this macadamia-derived bioactive beta-sitosterol, and guess what they found? They found that beta-sitosterol can prevent those abnormal blood vessels from growing and destroying the joint. Now, this has been done in the lab, so animal models only, but it's a really interesting prospect to think about how something from the macadamia might be useful in lowering inflammation, but perhaps protecting the joint in arthritis as well. This is an area of more research, but it just shows you the power of, the lowly tree nut. You never think about it as particularly beneficial, but actually quite amazing. Hey, check this out. I've got a guide on the 5 small daily habits that boost brain health and prevent cognitive decline. And it's free. I share simple, easy to use recommendations that you can add to your routine today. These are habits that I use personally, and it's yours right now for free in the caption below. All you have to do is click on the link below the video. Now, I love macadamia nuts, just roasted, just a touch of sea salt. It's great. Again, don't add too much salt. But, you can also cook with macadamia nuts. There's a number of Thai and Southeast Asian dishes where they add nuts into the dish, including macadamias. You get this nice crunch. Great way to actually add a plant-based texture with protein into a veggie mix, for example. You get a really spicy, tangy veggie dish, maybe with eggplant or whatever, and you throw some macadamia nuts in there and stir fry that, serve it over a bed of rice. Really great. So anybody looking for recipes, listen, I have some recipes, but I will also tell you, easy way is just go into Google, search macadamia savory, if you want to look for a Thai dish and recipe, and hit search, touch video, and watch somebody who really knows what they're doing describe for you how they do it, how easy it actually is. They'll give you the recipe as well, and you can actually see it being made right before your own eyes. That's the easiest way for me to actually tell you how to find creative ways to actually use any of these tree nuts that we're actually talking about today. Okay, now the last nut that I want to tell you about is actually not really a nut, so it's a little bit of a cheat, but we think about it as nuts because they have the name on it, and that's pine nuts. In fact, there's another name for pine nuts. If you are Italian or familiar with Italian recipes, pignoli, okay, Pignoli, pignoli. Now, pine nuts, as I said, are not a true tree nut, actually a seed. And you know what they're a seed of? They're a seed of the pine tree, right? You think about pine cones, pine nuts, they're actually all in there, all right? Now, it's really difficult to get a lot of these pine nuts out of a pine cone or a pine tree. That's where they're kind of pricey, all right? It's not that easy to get them because they're growing wild. And so pine nuts aren't really considered a food for humans, but they are really a treat. They're used in Mediterranean cuisine. You can find them in Asia. You can find them everywhere, actually. And they're great when you actually toast them lightly or you mix them together in something like pesto, okay? And if you've never made pesto, all right, pesto is something everyone who spends any time in the kitchen, you got to know how to do it, all right? So I'm just going to tell you how to do it. If you know a better recipe than what I'm about to tell you, stick with yours, but I'm just going to tell you for newbies, here's what you actually do to make your own homemade pesto. You take pine nuts, all right? You take some garlic. You get some basil leaves, not the dried ones, all right? Not the dried spice. Get fresh basil leaves. You can find them in almost every grocery store, really year-round, because these are grown indoors as well. And get some extra virgin olive oil. Get the highest quality you can. I like to use a monovarietal made with one variety of olives. I like, for example, Greek olive oil is Koroneiki olives. Have the high polyphenols like hydroxytyrosol. Spanish olive oil, PQL, Picual, very high levels of polyphenols. In Italian, in Umbria, there's a olive that's grown frequently called Moraiolo, very, very high levels of polyphenols. These three, Cornecchi, Picuel, Moraiolo, some of the highest levels of polyphenols that are out there. So get some of that if you're going to make your pesto. And what you do is, if you wanted to do it old school, like the original way, all right, what you do is you take a mortar and pestle. These are, you can find them in wood, but they're usually originally stone. A mortar and pestle is like a stone bowl, all right, and it's got this like this handly like thing with a ball at the end of it, and literally you put these ingredients in there: the pine nuts, the garlic, the basil leaves, extra virgin olive oil, and you just grind them together, or you mash them together. All right. You want to do it a faster way, more water way. Throw them into a food processor and just buzz it, and it'll mix it all together, blend them all together, and you know what you're going to wind up with? You're going to wind up with this incredible green paste. It's going to be kind of a grainy green paste, absolutely delicious. You can add a little touch of salt on it if you want, and you can also add some cheese to it if you eat dairy. Pecorino Romano cheese or Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. Always get the real stuff. Don't get the gigantic factory mass-made stuff. Just grind it, throw it into there, pulse it all together, get it nice and smooth. And now you have something that not only can you spread onto bread, but you could also do it the way that they do it in Liguria, which is a part of Italy that pesto's most famous from. Cook some pasta, all right? Throw some your pesto sauce on there after it's done. Mix it around, and now you've got yourself a delicious pesto pasta that gives you the benefits, the health benefits from the extra virgin olive oil, the bioactives from the basil, the garlic, and the pine nuts as well. All right. So the pine nuts, although it's a seed, actually also has healthy fats, also has dietary fiber. Now, the other thing about pine nuts that they have is they have their own special bioactive called ellagic acid. All right. Ellagic acid is the same bioactive found in strawberries. It actually is anti-inflammatory, cuts off the blood supply of tumors. It's cancer starving. And that's another really cool benefit of pine nuts. So a lot of these, tree nuts, and in this case, the pine nut, the seed, have their own superpower of some bioactive they have in there that can be health beneficial. All right. I'm going to tell you one more thing you can do with pine nuts I love to do. I love to actually add pine nuts to a spinach dish that I once ate at a Spanish restaurant. All right, it's a Spanish, I think it's a Catalan spinach dish. But basically, you take some extra virgin olive oil, the kinds I told you about earlier, take a little garlic, get the garlic golden brown, and throw your spinach in there. You can use baby spinach or any kind of spinach leaves. Just break off the stems and then let that heat up. Now the spinach will actually wilt in seconds. All right, I'm talking about like in under a minute. You'll actually have the spinach will wilt, fold. It'll start to cook. You got that nice extra virgin olive oil, and you got the garlic going. And then what you can do is throw some golden raisins in. All right, and then throw some toasted pine nuts right in there, quickly turn it, take it off the heat. That's it. Like you're done in, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, 3 minutes, let's call it, and put it onto a dish. That's a dish that I really enjoy eating. And in addition to the benefits of the pine nuts and the garlic and the extra virgin olive oil and the raisins, okay, which have some dietary fiber and it's got some resveratrol in it as well. The spinach itself is a great source of nitric oxide, and nitric oxide, which widens your blood vessels, lowers blood pressure, which is actually good for overall health as well. So, when I'm talking about healthy tree nuts and seeds, in this case with pine nuts, don't think about you have to have it only as trail mix. Get creative, go traditional, look for ways to actually incorporate them into a more diverse and broad palette, and look for recipes online. All right. So just to wrap up a little bit, all these nuts, tree nuts, and that seed, the pine nuts, They contribute great source of protein, good source of healthy fats, dietary fiber, good for gut health, lowers inflammation, improves lipid metabolism, which can lower your cholesterol, streamline your metabolism, and so it brings down your blood glucose. And they're actually absolutely delicious, easy to work with. Just don't buy too much at a time so they don't go rancid on you. And the last thing I'm just telling you is that, remember, I recommend that you actually buy them plain and figure out how to doctor them up to your own personal liking. You want personalized nutrition? This is your opportunity to actually have some fun with your own raw tree nuts, and then come up with some recipes you mix yourself. Don't buy too much, don't make too much, store it, okay, and snack on it. And now you've actually found some really, really good, easy snacks that can tide you over between meals, good for your health, good for your brain, good for your gut, and it's healing as well. All right, that's it. I hope you learned something new this time, and thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Hi there. If you enjoyed watching this video, I know you'll love the next one. Stay here and check it out, and I'll see you there.